F.L.Y, or F.L.Y, is Phantasialand's newest roller coaster, and oh my gosh, what an experience this is. There literally is nothing else like it in the world. So first of all, you should go to Phantasialand and ride this thing. But I'm going to do my best to talk about this entire experience because this really is an experience. Don't just think of this as a roller coaster. F.L.Y is integrated into the Rookburgh section of Phantasialand. And I'm actually going to have a full separate review coming out soon of Rookburgh because there's so much to talk about with this area. But for this review, I'm mainly going to stick to the roller coaster. But in a lot of ways, the ride is the land. And that really brings me to my first major point with this attraction is when you enter Rookburgh, everywhere you look, you just see roller coaster track. And you have no idea where this ride is about to go. And it's pretty disorienting. I mean, this is not great for photo ops because you're trying to take a picture of this one section of the track, get the train going, but then the train goes behind you. And you're like, whoa, I didn't expect it to go there. And so you turn around and now the train is going the other way. Even after riding it several times, I truly did not get a good grasp on this layout. But part of that reason is because F.L.Y doesn't have a ton of standout moments. Everything is cohesive. Yes, there's absolutely some parts of the ride specifically that I'm going to talk about, but the big aspect that they're really pushing with this ride is they really want to make it feel like you're flying. And obviously, there are other flying coasters out there. Vekoma first debuted their Flying Dutchman models with Batwing, Firehawk, Nighthawk, and you have B&M that does their flying coasters. But this is the newest generation of flying, and it really is something. When you ride a B&M flyer like Manta or Tatsu, you can identify very specific moments of that roller coaster. First it goes into the drop, then it does the pretzel loop, and then we have a turn into an inversion. You get the point. On F.L.Y, everything blends together, so it feels like one big element in a way. There are two different inversions on this coaster. They're pretty far apart from each other, but this ride experience is very long. Honestly, they could have ended the roller coaster where that second launch hits, and I don't think anyone would complain. The first half alone is a very long experience, and it's one of the many things that I love about this roller coaster. It's so brilliant in a lot of ways. Let's kind of walk through the actual experience of riding this thing. So first, when you enter your queue, this is a very long walk to the station. The queue goes throughout almost the entire land, just walking through all these different pathways, and it's very themed. Everything in Rookburgh is steampunk, so as you're walking along, you'll see a lot of different props and displays that kind of help tie together this story. But then when you actually get to the main station, everything is underground. They've built up this land in layers, and so it's very atmospheric because they can control the lighting, the sound. There's a cool little pre-show. It's not like you go and stand in a dedicated room, wait for the doors to open. It's just as you're in line, there'll be people talking about the experience you're about to have. They'll be explaining the locker system. Because F.L.Y goes over every single pathway in this area, they are very strict about loose articles. Absolutely nothing can be brought on this ride with you. There are metal detectors to make sure of this, but the lockers are free. It's very similar to Velocicoaster's locker setup if you've done that, but as a result, no one has any footage of the station, which is a crying shame because the station is incredible. Essentially, you have the train that's up against this wall, and behind it is this big giant gear. All these different pipes running everywhere. It's so cool. And that kind of brings me to the train design, which honestly might be my favorite part of this ride. As weird as it is to say, Vekoma came up with just the most brilliant loading system that technologically, I am just so in awe of this thing that how this ride works blows my mind more than the actual ride experience. And that's not a knock on it. I mean, the ride experience is amazing, but I'm just floored at how they came up with this. Because when you ride a B&M flyer, what happens when you hit the brake run? The train ahead of you is still loading and they have to dispatch it, so you're just dangling potentially for several minutes. It is not a pleasant experience at all. So F.L.Y fixes this. You board in a similar setup to the way you board Forbidden Journey. Ignore the moving loading platform, but you have the seats that are up against the wall, and then you'll rotate into flying position, and then after the ride experience is done, you go back to that same loading position where the track physically rotates. We don't have any footage of this obviously in the station to show, but here's a shot of the test model at the Vekoma factory in the Netherlands, and you can kind of see how it's set up, and it is just so smart. Not to mention, the seats are very comfortable. I mean, the way that this leg flap design is set up is very smart and easy. You take a seat, you put your legs in this little half half circle and then move them inwards and it snaps into place. It's absolutely incredible. Like, everything about F.L.Y is just so well designed that I'm just floored at every aspect of this experience. Now, when you dispatch out of the station, you go into a dark ride section. And believe it or not, there's actually not a POV video out there of this attraction. So I physically cannot even show you what this beginning part looks like. But basically, you're curving upwards to the right, still in that loading position. So you're moving sideways. There's this epic music playing. You're seeing all these different things on the screens. There's no words or anything. So if you don't speak German, I mean, it's no big deal. You'll be able to follow this experience just fine. You emerge out into the daylight, come almost to a stop, not quite, and then hit that launch section. This is the world's only launched flying coaster. So it's a pretty odd sensation. I mean, it starts off very gradual, but it really kicks in at the end. What's interesting though, is that it is way more noticeable when you sit towards the front of the train than the back. I would argue when you sit in the back, you can't even really feel the second launch. And it's part of the reason that I think this is a front row experience. The other big reason that I say that is because of the airtime. What? Yes, you get airtime on a flying coaster. How does that feel? Weird. But it's awesome because essentially you're facing the ground and then the track moves upwards into a parabolic airtime hill-like motion and your whole back and body move vertically and you hit the back of the seat. But it's like floater airtime. It's not like ejector, but there's a couple of these moments and it is so strange. The airtime pop coming up after the second launch is so good. It's probably the best part of the ride and best experienced in the front row. This is 100% a roller coaster you'll want to do multiple times, and the front row line always is a bit longer, so you will have to wait for it if that's an experience you want to do. I'd at least recommend sitting towards the front even if it isn't the front row, but man, it's pretty cool being right up front when you feel like it's just you and you're just flying along this track. And even when you're on it, because of how your head is positioned, you're more angled towards the ground, so it's hard to tell where you're going next. But you're literally like flying among the pathways. There's so many near misses because you're getting so close to the walls, through tunnels, past different theming elements. At one point, a bunch of steam blows in your face, and it's just graceful. It's not the most intense flyer, but that's okay. It is definitely the most fun, that's for sure. And don't get me wrong, it does pull some good positive G's at a couple different parts, but it's not going to be as intense as some of these maneuvers that you'd find on a B&M flyer. Like Flying Dinosaur at Universal Studios Japan is absolutely still the most intense flying coaster out there. It's probably the most demented flying coaster. But do I like F.L.Y more than Flying Dinosaur? Yes. Because this is a more complete experience and really feels like the epitome of flying. If humans could fly, this is probably what it would feel like. Flying Dinosaur is more about crazy acrobatic stunts and wild maneuvers, which is outstanding, but this is just a different approach. So I'm not really going to try and go through each specific element of this layout because one, it's still hard for me to figure out the order of these moments. But I mentioned I really enjoy the launches. All those different airtime pops are great. Every time you fly really close to the ground or past a building, it just really adds to that sense of speed that you get. Even right there towards the end, you're like right up against some water and there's these fountains spurting up that act as a near miss. It's just one of those experiences that when you hit the brake run, you're just in awe at what you just did. Like, you have the biggest smile on your face, like, oh my gosh, first of all, I can't believe an experience like this exists. But second of all, that there's literally no cons to this ride. I couldn't tell you a single negative thing about it. They absolutely nailed it. I would love to see more rides out there like this from Vekoma, but I don't think this one will ever be topped. Because sure, if another park builds this, you could add in maybe some crazier elements, do all these cool different things, but it's not gonna top the experience that you get on F.L.Y. Unless it were built by a park that just did crazy elaborate theming on this scale, which frankly, I think the only other people that would probably do something like that are Disney or Universal, and there's no way Disney would ever build this thing, though something like this in Pandora would be pretty cool. So, hey, Epic Universe, if you want to build a really cool flying coaster, I have a couple ideas for you. Remember that Lord of the Rings section that you guys were talking about? Yeah, boom, that'd be cool. So for F.L.Y's final score, of course I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. This is one of the most brilliantly designed rides on the face of the planet. Everything about this experience amazes me. Is it like my favorite coaster ever or anything? I mean, no, but technologically it is a marvel. Phantasialand set the bar so high with this roller coaster. This is 100% an experience you should try and do if you're a roller coaster fan. Not to mention Phantasialand is just like the most incredible place ever. But this ride will wow you. So let me know down in the comments below if you've ridden F.L.Y, if you agree with the points I've made. If you think I left anything out, let me know what down below. And of course, stay tuned for more here at Coaster Studios. I'll see you next time.